I'm Dave Thomas. This is the second in a series of 3 videos for the Estes Orion 3D model rocket set. Warning ahead of time, you need a 3D printer in order to do this. So either you have your own or you have access to one. And these are made for filament printers. Now you could probably use a resin printer. I don't know if it would be very strong. I know especially some of these fin assemblies here are fairly thin. And my guess is that a resin printed piece may crack easier than a filament printed one. As a point of reference, I am using a Dremel 3D 45 Digilab printer. We'll talk more about that a little bit later here in the settings used. I'm not going to go into detail with settings. If you would like to know the nitty-gritty details, send me a message and I'd be glad to pass those on to you. Something else about this is that the settings you use for your 3D print are going to affect the weight and weight distribution of the parts that we print here. So for example, if you have a nose cone with 50% infill, that's going to be lighter than a nose cone, say, with 80% infill. And if you vary these between parts, say you do the nose at 50 and the fins at 80, or whatever it happens to be, that can change the center of gravity and thus the stability. So make sure you check stability of these rockets, especially if you're using different amounts of infill for the parts. The rockets themselves go together fairly easily. I consider this more of an intermediate set though because of the 3D printing, and you'll actually want to have a little experience with that or experiment with it with these. So this is the Rigel kit. It is the largest of the 3. It uses 24 millimeter motors. And one of the other things that happens when you buy this set is that Estes sends you the 3D print files and the instructions in PDF format. Now I had forgotten to print that before coming over to do the video here, so I'm going to pause at this point, grab the instructions, and then come back. Here are the instructions, and now we have a parts list that we can go through here. Okay, so we have a nice shock cord there. That's a centering ring. Okay, first body tube, second body tube. Okay, motor mount tube. And this is a motor spacer that we'll use for positioning the engine block, which actually that's the engine block, not a centering ring. Okay, we have some decals. I guess it is a decal, it may be the only one. Yep. Alright. Here's our parachute, centering rings, engine clip sleeve, and finally the motor spacer. This is used if you're launching this with 24 millimeter C or D engines that are only 7 centimeters long. If you're launching an E engine that's 9 centimeters long, you don't need this. Alright, I just keep these in my launch box, a whole bunch of them. Alright, and then from the 3D printer, we have a fin can, nose cone, and then a coupler that includes a secondary launch lug. Now, I haven't done anything to these except to clean them a bit, and I just noticed I need to clean that launch lug. Some people will use solvent vapors to help smooth out the little lines and such. Off the top of my head, I don't even remember what you use to do that with PLA, which is what this is. And those types of solvents also tend to be more hazardous to work with. If you want to, you can spray this with a sandable filling primer, and that will also fill in the ridges here of the print filament. The drawback to that is that then you have to sand it by hand, getting all into those nooks and crannies and such, and then you have to paint it. And one of the things that's nice about this kit is you can change your filament and have different colored parts. Another thing you can do, again, to help smooth this out, is to apply a mixture of ethyl alcohol and 15-minute epoxy in a ratio of 1 part alcohol to 2 parts epoxy. And you just slather that all over there and then just kind of let it dry, cure, while the excess drips off. And that sounds like it's really straightforward, but you have to get just the right amount of that mixture. If you get too much, you get dripping blobs all over the place. If you don't get enough, it looks really patchy. If you get it just right, it'll look nice and smooth. Okay. For this model, though, I'm just going to go with the parts that came off the printer here. Our first task is to assemble the motor mount, and so we'll go ahead and make some markings first of all. Alright, so on the spacer tube, the yellow one here, we are going to draw a line at 12 millimeters, or half an inch, from one end of the tube. Alright, and then for the motor mount tube here, I'm going to mark one end as aft on the inside, like that, and that'll just keep me from getting this going in the wrong direction. So from the aft end, we need okay, I see what they're just going to have us do this one at a time. So they're saying 2 inches here. That's actually the distance up from the aft end. We're not making a line there. That's where the glue is going to go. Okay, so for this, and unless I say otherwise, we're going to use wood glue for all the non-plastic components. For the printed stuff, you'll probably want some gel type super glue. You can use epoxy if you want to, but it does require a lot more expense and mess. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just kind of get a measurement of about 2 inches, put my thumb there, and then going from the aft end, I'm going to put this up inside until my thumbnail hits, and then I'm just going to rotate that around in there. It looks like we got a good film. Alright, now we're going to take the engine block, slide that in, and then take this tube here, our spacer tube, to push that up until we get to that line and pull it out again. Okay, now I don't know if we can get a good look in there. I think that glue needed to be a lot farther up. So I'm going to try this again, see what I can do about wiping out the initial glue. It's in a fairly thin film, and that's part of the problem. Okay, so let's do that at 3 inches. Maybe a bit long. Let's go with 7 centimeters here. About there. Because the motor itself is going to be 9 centimeters long, if it's an E. Alright, Doing this again, but using 9 centimeters. Okay, now this is, gotta be careful here, as this is going to be really sticky and it's going to want to stick. Alright, one more time here. Okay, that's better. And the glue has been forced up to form its own fillet there. Okay, now we need a mark from the forward end, just to make things more confusing. Alright, that's going to be 3/4 of an inch. They're not even going to give us a metric on this one. Okay, and then we're going to take a hobby knife and cut a slit here. It's about 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch, and this should be coming right underneath that ring. Mine's actually a little bit low there. I'm going to come up just a little higher. Okay, and then we just take the retainer and pop that into place. Alright, now we need a mark at 3.8 centimeters from the aft end. Okay, and here what we're going to do is take the sleeve, push this down. We're going to put some glue around this and then push this all the way down until we get the mark on the inner side here. Alright, now an applicator doesn't work as well for this one, so we'll go back to using just the regular bottle. And you don't need a whole lot of glue on here. In fact, this is already probably more than I need. This sleeve just helps keep the engine retainer in place. It doesn't actually receive a lot of stress. Come on. We'll go with that. Okay, and just kind of smooth around there. Alright, now we need our centering rings here. And these will usually just pop out. If there's a lot of resistance, just use your hobby knife to cut them. Carefully remove the interior. Alright, and then just quickly sand these a little bit. I'm using 150 grit. It doesn't really matter. Anything from about 100 to 220 is going to work fine. I'm just taking off the little nubbins that were left after we poked these out. Alright, going to the next page. Okay, now we're going to make yet another mark, in this case at 1/2 inch or 12 millimeters from the aft end. Right there. And that's where our aft centering ring will go. Alright, and then the forward one will go just until we hit the engine clip there. Okay, so for this one, let's do a dry fit quickly. Alright, now if you're having trouble with that, you can use a thumbnail here and just chamfer the edges. This just rounds them off a little bit. Alright, if it still won't go, you may need to sand the inside a little. Alright, so there's our mark. Here I'm going to run a bead of glue just inside. Now we don't want to hit the clip. The glue won't stick to it very well, but we'll try to avoid hitting it anyway. And now we're going to bring that down to our mark. Right there. Okay, try and even it all out so it's perpendicular. And then take a finger, smooth in the excess. Okay, we'll take our forward centering ring here. Double check. Yep, okay, so just until it makes contact with the engine hook there. So we can just slide that in. Give some more glue around this. I lost about the last 15 seconds of the previous video clip. My camera only goes for about 10 minutes on a video clip, and apparently I talk too much. Alright, so after I put the forward ring on there, I just ran a bead of glue along the forward edge here to make a fillet, and then did the same thing down here, but only on the inside edge. I'm leaving the aft edge here unfilleted for the moment until I get it mounted within the fin assembly, and then I will put that fillet in, as well as any fillet I might need on the outside. While we're waiting for the engine mount glue to dry, we can put the body tubes together. So for this you'll need the coupler, and when I printed mine it had some gunk in here, that stray filament, so you may need to clean that out. Here again we're going to use a thick cyanoacrylate glue. Alright, so just pick one. Now I had a little imperfection in one of these. Here we go. So that's a good place to put a coupler. Come on. Yeah, this glue is almost empty. Alright, then we're just going to put the coupler in here. Move that back and forth a little bit, and then on the other tube we'll do the same thing. Guess we need new glue. Alright, and so here, grip the aft part here tightly so it doesn't slip as you do this. Alright, and just move that back and forth a little bit, and now we will let that dry. Now we are ready to insert the motor mount into the fin assembly here. And so first we'll just do a dry fit. Okay, and I've got a little bit of a lip right here. And so I'm going to take some 100 grit sandpaper and just sand that off. finding little bits of plastic hanging off here. Alright, let's try this again. Okay, so it's still a little bit snug. So now we'll try the rings. Alright, that fits now. It's snug yet, but it fits it. And if you're worried about it, you can just keep sanding this until you're comfortable with this going in and out. Alright, now they show 2 rings of glue here that are supposed to hit both of the centering rings. But what we actually want to do here is we're going to stick a ring of glue fairly deep inside there to hit this ring. And then before we put this in all the way, we'll put another bead of glue around the edge there. And that way it'll catch this. And then when this is in properly, this will be flush with this. Okay, so the 2 tubes will be flush with each other. Alright, so once again we're going to need some thick super glue. And here I'm just going to run it down as far as I can go. Okay, well, we got half of it. Let's try it again. Alright. So now we're going to slide this in. Now, my personal preference is to put the engine clip underneath the launch lug there. It just helps keep it out of the way on the launch pad. Alright, now I'm going to put in a bead here, just inside the edge. Okay, you may need to move things around like I'm doing here. That's fine. Just don't get glue in your fingers. If you get a little glue on the motor mount like I did there, don't worry about it. It's not going to hurt anything. Alright, so we're going to push this in. There we go. Alright, and it should hit against a block up in here. Alright, we're going to let this dry for a few minutes. While we're waiting for glue to dry, we can go ahead and assemble the parachute. Now, if you've seen any of my earlier videos, you'll know that I like to use snap swivels rather than to tie the parachute directly to the nose cone. Alright, but you do have to get this extra. You can find it just about any place that you can find fishing tackle. And the size doesn't really matter as long as the clip part here can move freely on the eyelet of the nose cone. Alright, so it should be able to move about there and not get stuck in one position or another. Okay, so this one's large enough. It's actually a little bit too large, but that's fine. On the parachute itself, go ahead and open this up. Alright, and then find all the shroud line loops here. Okay, and I'm going to put all those loops on one finger here, kind of hooking them. And then with my other hand, I'm going to find the center of the parachute sheet. And now I can move my fingers back and forth here to change the relative line distance. I can also shift where the parachute sheet actually is. And the idea here is to get all of those corners to be approximately the same level. Now, if you want to tie this to the parachute, you can. All right, you're going to take all these loops, you're going to stick them through the nose cone eyelet. All right, and then you're going to pull those back out. All right, make sure you regain the loops there. And then you can pass the entire parachute through this and pull it down tight, and that will form a knot on the eyelet. Now, I'm not going to do that for the reasons I've just given. Okay, so here, if you're going to do the snap swivel, you prep this in the same way. So once again, we're going to get all of our shroud lines here. All right, find the center of the parachute once more, get all those corners in the same spot. All right, and I'm always hanging on to the shroud lines so they don't change their relative distance while I'm doing this. All right, we're going to pass all the loops through the swivel side of the snap swivel. All right, so that's just hanging there. We're going to pass the loops over the snap swivel like that, and then we're going to pull these tight. All right, and then we'll recheck our parachute once more. Okay, so that still looks good. If things shifted or you just don't like the way it came out, just loosen this and try again. Once you have it where you want it, then take a little bit of white or wood glue and just put it right on that knot. Just a little tiny bit. You can work that in with your finger, and that just keeps the knot from coming undone. And now when you're ready to put the parachute on, you just snap this into place. The main advantage of doing this is that if you don't want to store your rocket with a parachute in it, you can just unclip it. Also, if you need to change parachutes, so maybe you've got a very windy day and you don't want this drifting so far, you could pull this out and put in a smaller size parachute. All right, I'm going to set this aside, let that little bit of glue dry. Now we're ready to join the fin can onto the body tube. And here I'm just going to do a dry fit quickly. Okay. See if one end's better than the other. Not really. Okay, now this is going to go in much like the coupler did. We're going to add some gel type super glue. And here we're going to want something that we can align the launch lugs with. And they recommend using a launch rod. Okay, so this is half of a launch rod. But when we put this on, our launch lug here needs to align with the launch lug up here. Okay, so first the glue. I'll put a little bit extra in here just so we get a good connection. Okay, now once again we need our launch lug here. We'll put this in, move it back and forth a little bit, and you see that's actually kind of loose there. That's why I put the extra glue in. Alright, now I can send the launch rod up through this. Actually, this may require a full-size launch rod. I'm going to have to just use this to sight it. Yeah, this rocket's tall enough that to do this properly you do need a full-size launch rod, and I don't have one handy. But this also just gives us a nice sight line. Alright, we're going to call that good. Okay, now we do still have this gap here. I don't like that. Let's see if we can squish that in better. Okay, and we'll let that one dry for a few minutes. The glue on the fin can has cured, and so now we're ready to install the shock cord. We'll need to cut out the shock cord mount here. Alright, and then get the shock cord itself right here. Now what they're showing is what Estes has been doing for decades. And that where you simply put some glue on this and then fold the 1 over the 2 over the 3, and squish it all together, which is fine, and especially in a big tube like this, that's not a big deal. But it does tend to make a lump that sticks into the inside of the tube. And a viewer gave me this tip where we can split the end of the shock cord here. About that far. And now when we put this into the glue, the 2 forked parts here will be spread over that 2 region, and then when the 2 folds over to the 3, these are on either side of the main part of the shock cord here instead of on top of it. Okay, next we're going to need white glue or wood glue, and you want to basically cover this with glue. It doesn't need to be really thick, just even. Alright, so now I'm going to place the shock cord down here. Alright, with my 2 forked pieces here over the 2. Alright, now I can fold my 1 over the 2. Alright, you want to squish all the air out as much as you can, so we just have paper, glue, and shock cord there. Okay, and then you can feel in here that this is actually centered. Okay, we're going to squish that down some more. Alright, now I'm going to make a curvature in here, so that the convex side here with the shock cord coming out, this is going to be attached to the body tube. We're going to add another nice even film of glue here. Alright, and now we're going to slide this in, and this needs to go at least 1.5 inches down so that it does not impact the nose cone. Alright, I'm going to turn this over now so the glue is facing the body tube, and then I'm just pressing down with my fingers here and against my hand to get all of that remaining glue out. Or not glue, air. And if you have particularly long fingers, this can go down even further. It won't hurt it. Okay, I'm going to set that aside here, and then take the nose cone. Okay, here we're going to slide the rubber band here, or shock cord, through the nose cone eyelet. We're going to put it in place with a double knot, or 2 half hitches. You want that good and tight. Pull from multiple directions, and when you've got it where you want it, then this free end you can trim back to about 1/4 inch or 5 to 6 millimeters there. You don't want to go all the way back or it'll slip through the knot. But if you have a long piece hanging there, sometimes it gets caught between the shoulder and the body tube, and that can cause problems with recovery. Alright, then I'm going to take another little dab of glue here and just work that into the knot. Do not use plastic cement or super glue for this part, as it will eat the rubber. Okay, now we're going to let that dry for a few minutes. While the shock cord glue is drying, we can go ahead and put on the decal here. Now, you can't really see it here as there's white lettering on the background, but it actually says Rigel there. My kit did not come with the Estes logo that it shows there. So basically you can put this here or you can put it down here, whichever. You do want to wash your hands before doing this just to help knock down the amount of fingerprints and stuff you transfer. You'll still get some fingerprints. It does lessen it a bit. Now the hardest part here is getting the paper off the back of this. There we go. Alright, so just peel that back. Now once you get this on, it's pretty much stuck there. So we want to try and get it right the first time. Now I'm putting this on the side opposite the launch lug. So that you can see it when it's on the launch pad. Alright, I'm just going to let it touch down there. I'm going to check and make sure that's as straight as it can be. It looks good. Alright, once you got it where you want it, then go ahead and press it down, removing the air bubbles. Alright, so for our final assembly here, we'll go, if you haven't attached the parachute already, go ahead and do so. If you're prepping this for launch, you're going to want to add about 6 pieces of wadding down in there, loosely crumpled. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to attach the parachute here. Okay, now to fold the parachute, the way I like to do it here is to fold it in half and match the corners to each other. Okay, so we've got a corner up here, we've got a corner here, or 2 corners in the middle, 2 corners over here down on this side. Okay, and then what we'll do is fold this third over so that its corners overlap with the middle, and then we'll do the same thing with the other side. Alright, so all the corners are now down here. We have kind of a kite shape going on. Alright, go ahead and bring out those shock or the shroud lines there. Grab them about in the middle and bring that up into the parachute like that. If you've got the snap swivel, leave it hanging out. If you don't have the snap swivel, leave about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters of shroud lines between there. Alright, now we're just going to fold the edges over the shroud lines, forming kind of a spike here. And then we'll take the point of the spike and bring it up to the corners. Now for a model like this, I'm going to fold this over again and over itself, okay, making it a little bit thicker. Alright, and then we're simply going to stuff the shock cord down inside there. Alright, followed by the parachute. Okay, and then any remaining shock cord we can just kind of press down there. Alright, add the nose cone. Now we're going to do a shake test. Alright, so just shaking it, that fell out. That means we need a little more friction there. So here I'm going to add about half a circumference of masking tape to start with. So we'll just ease this out a little bit and put the tape toward the top of the shoulder. Now we're not trying to tape this on to the rocket, we're just increasing the circumference a little bit of that nose cone shoulder. Okay, that feels much better. Alright, now we can give it a shake, and it's fine that way, and yet we can still pull this out with just a little bit of force. Okay, now finally, when you put this on the launch pad, you're going to want to align the nose cone fins with the tail fins there, otherwise the launch rod will not go properly through the launch lugs and past the nose cone. Okay, so from nose to tail, that is my Rigel. I hope you had fun building this with me. Have a great launch and a safe recovery. And please stay tuned for more of my videos.